Hey everyone, this is Nick LaRovere, TotalStoryteller.com, director and producer, and I want to share what I've learned with you. So, today's topic, doing a bit of a test podcast episode, and I thought I'd use a piece of material that I covered in the past, and that is the answer to the following question. What are the bare bones essentials of a good story? It's a very important question for us as directors. We have to be able to identify what those critical pieces are of a good story. And the more you write your own stories, the more you create films, the more you dive into that stuff, the better you will know it, and the more you'll know it like the back of your hand, and that's a good thing. So what makes for a good story? Right? There's dozens of books on screenwriting. There's tons of material out there. You could spend countless hours reading about it, and that's good. You should read about it. You should try and learn as much as you can. But I found this gem, this total gem of a piece of advice that I think just really boils down what a good story is in basically one sentence. So I was reading this book. It's called The Working Film Director. It's written by Charles Wilkinson. And the explanation was as follows. Here's what Aristotle said about the basics of Western style storytelling. You need a sympathetic hero on a vital quest against insurmountable obstacles. In addition, the ending needs to be surprising, but inevitable. So, I'll just let that sink in for a second. This is important. Okay. So, let's break that down. What does that mean exactly? Right. So, you need a sympathetic hero. This is very important. This really establishes the ability for you to get viewers to actually care about your story. You've probably heard it before. If the audience doesn't care about your main character, then they're not going to care about your story. All right? That's just a basic starting point. Okay? So, if you need to have... Why do you need a sympathetic hero? Why do you need a character that people care about? The bottom line is, you need to connect them emotionally to that character. They need to care emotionally. They need to have that connection to that character in order to see them. Obviously they understand consciously this is a fiction. This is not a real person. But they need to have that emotional connection as if it was a real person. If you don't have something that's relatable, if you don't have a character that's sympathetic, relatable, they don't feel that connection, then they're just going to be like, yeah, this isn't a real person, and I really couldn't care less what happens to them. And that's the last thing you want. Obviously, one of the driving factors behind people continuing to watch your film, to read your story, whatever it is they want to find out what happens to that character. They want to know what they're going to do next. They want to know if they're going to achieve the goal that they're trying to achieve, if they're going to accomplish the mission. And they're not going to care about any of that if you don't have a sympathetic character, sympathetic hero, which is a term I'll be using. So what are a few ways you can have a sympathetic hero? One way, it's popularized. The term was coined by Blake Snyder in his famous Save the Cat book, which is great. I definitely recommend it. And that term comes from what he calls a save the cat moment. Now, this is a moment in your film early on. If it's a feature, we're talking within the first 5 to 10 minutes probably, where that's a beat where you meet the hero. That's not the important part, but you're seeing the hero and he does something nice, does something that endears you to him or her, makes you like them, like save a cat. pull some kid's cat out of a tree, whatever. The actual quote from the book here is, the save the cat beat in any movie, novel, or story is that moment when we meet its hero and he does something nice, like save a cat, that makes us like him and want to root for him. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. It doesn't have to be them actually doing something for someone, something nice for someone. That is a literal thing you can have them do. But it's just any moment where it's clear that they're expressing some kind of human care for somebody else. I know that might sound vague, but I'm not sure how else to put it right now. So saving the cat. That's one way to make your character sympathetic right up front. I don't think that means that you can then have them necessarily doing totally uncharacteristic behaviors throughout the rest of the story. Like they just happen to do that one nice thing that one time. I'm not sure that's going to do it for you. I think that thing that they do has to be in line with their behavior for the rest of the film, right? Even an anti-hero, right, has some admirable traits. Well, and I'll get into that, but even an anti-hero has some admirable traits, and has a little thing that they tend to do that's in line with their character, their persona as a character, that can endear the audience to that character. And that should be what you draw from when you're picking that save the cat moment, I think. I think it doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite make sense if your character just does something that's totally out of the ordinary for them that one time, right? You may fool your audience briefly, but the rest of that they will no longer have anything relatable with that character, right? A sympathetic character is one who may not be good traditionally necessarily, but they have admirable qualities. They're respectable, they're likable, they at least need to be relatable. That's why two-dimensional characters that are just a pure evil villain or just a purely good hero that has never had a streak of bad in them their whole lives, they're just perfect, right? Those can be fun stories, but an audience is not going to connect with that like a real human character. I don't think it's necessarily very well suited to a film, with the exception being you can kind of pull that off with a villain. I'm not so sure about a hero, right? An example just pulling out of off the top of my head, in the animated Disney movie Hercules, you have Hercules is a relatable kind of bumbling teenager. You know, he's optimistic, he's naive, but he wants to help people. He's got a good heart. And there's things that are relatable about him, but he's not this perfect hero. He's a little bit foolhardy. He is a little too big for his britches, tries too much. Even when he gains the abilities after all the training he does, he tries to take on a little more than he can take on at once. And then on the other hand, you have Hades, and he really is basically just your stereotypical two-dimensional villain. There's really nothing relatable about him. He's just evil because that's literally what he is. He is the master of hell, Hades. So there you go. A good example, I think, of a character where they're not a good person, they are relatable, and I think it works well, is the character Lou Bloom from Nightcrawler, the movie Nightcrawler. Lou is not a good person. If you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to spoil it, but it's pretty clear very quickly off the bat, he is not a good person. He's exploitative, he's cold, he's calculating, he's selfish. But he also, in my opinion, has admirable, relatable qualities. I don't think he's a good person. I don't like him, though I am interested to see what he does next. But I think these elements help. He is very hardworking, persistent, and clever. And those are relatable qualities I think are worthwhile to include even in an anti-hero like Lou Bloom. Right? And again, like I was saying, the audience has to care what happens to the character or the stakes of the challenge they're going to face, their challenges, their journey, their hopefully, but not necessarily, eventual victory. Everything will feel meaningless. Who cares what happens to this guy? I never cared about him in the first place. The second thing you need, the second essential element for a great film and a great story really in general, is a vital quest. By the way, if I sound more energetic, if this sounds different this section, it's because I've recorded this at a much later time. So you're seeing the sausage get made here. So, right, a vital quest. It's no joke. There are real stakes to this quest. It's not a trip to get groceries. Instead, it's a quest to find a cure for the hero's dying child. Maybe the cure is at the grocery store pharmacy. But only if there's assassins pursuing the hero and he has to make it to the pharmacy and back alive with the kid's medicine, or the kid will just die. Okay, that's more interesting. There's a story there, right? There's some stakes to that. And it's not, if he fails, he gets shot. It's like, okay, well, the physical stakes to him, it's not just physical danger. It's a serious emotional toll. Like, this thing, bad thing, is going to happen to someone that you care about, that has been demonstrated in the story that you care about, if you fail your quest. So, the key thing here being, it's not just the hero being in physical danger. Physical danger alone does not make stakes. If you have a hero that is willing to take drastic measures and encounter danger in order to, accomplish a goal, then just the potential outcome that they become hurt or killed is not enough. Then the story just ends if that happens. They have to stay alive and experience the consequences of their failure if they do fail, which inevitably in a good story they will fail to some extent. So getting hurt isn't consequential enough either. Those aren't high enough stakes. It's almost expected that they get hurt or experience some kind of failure. So physical consequences in general are not enough. There have to be emotional stakes that matter to the main character. This is absolutely essential. The emotional or spiritual consequences of his or her failure must be significant. And the audience, if the audience cares about your character, then they're going to care about those stakes because the character cares about those stakes. It's just like, when you're watching a film, scientifically speaking, the chemical that is associated with forming bonds between people also is created when you watch characters in a film or in a video go through certain experiences. So you're actually, the same brain process that's happening when you would have a real human connection with another real person actually happens when you're going through that experience and viewing a fictional character, which is very interesting, I think, and that's a whole nother topic. But so just like you would care about the stakes that matter to someone that you care about, right? Like whatever those might be, you're going to care the same way about this character. If, point one being, you've made them care about that character in the first place. Otherwise, the stakes won't matter. So, again, if the character doesn't fear death, for example, and no one will be harmed by his death, then his death holds no weight. Those aren't stakes. All right? It has to matter to someone that happens. And if they don't care about the consequences of their action and consequences of failing, then your audience also isn't going to care. Right? They might be what would we consider serious consequences, but if they don't care, if you don't show that matters to them, your audience isn't going to feel that. An example that I uses in the film Dan in real life. It stars Steve Carell as Dan. It's so romantic comedy. His biggest issue is that despite having 3 daughters and a large family, he's seems like he should be content in that. He's actually super lonely. His wife passed away, and the main conflict of that story is he risks losing a potential new romantic relationship, a partner, if he doesn't step up to the plate and change his passive behavior. He needs to not be so afraid. He needs to step up, take charge, and take charge of his destiny. So, bottom line, point 2, there has to be a vital quest. The vital quest has to have real stakes, not just physical stakes, but real emotional stakes that the audience is going to care about, because your character cares about what happens if they fail. The third thing is insurmountable obstacles. I'm a little shaky on this one. I'm not sure. I think this is 100% necessary. I think they should at least seem very significant, the obstacles, right? You got to really make your main character face some serious challenges. And that's what makes a movie interesting anyway. If it's just like, oh, that was kind of difficult, but it wasn't that bad. It's like, okay, well, that was boring and stupid. And anyway, so insurmountable obstacles, it seems impossible for the hero to achieve victory, at least as he is now. That's key. The deck is stacked against the hero. The enemy is too strong. There's too many of them. They're too clever. The obstacle ahead of them, it seems to tower over them, their own flaws, their own either moral flaws or their weaknesses, just in terms of what they're willing to and not willing to do, seriously hamper their ability to achieve victory. And that weakness is a super important part of the story, and a super important part of that character's arc, right? Because what a story is a simulated version of what people experience in real life, where they have a weakness, encounter an obstacle, and it is their journey to overcome that obstacle, and including failures along the way, and their discovery or realization that they need to change and how to change in order to overcome that obstacle, and then them making the decision to change and overcome that obstacle finally. That's what a story is a simulation of that experience that people go through in real life. So you need to have that obstacle. You need to have that weakness there, or you don't have a story. No one makes a movie, or at least there are no good movies, where someone, except maybe, I don't know, probably even Napoleon Dynamite, there's some kind of obstacle. I haven't seen it in so long, but there are no interesting stories where someone just is living their life and doesn't overcome some obstacle that is exacerbated by their own weakness and stupidity, which we all have in real life as well. So, one way you can create the insurmountable obstacle is, okay, well, what's my main character's weakness? Let's pit them directly against that weakness. What is the scenario or character I can create that is directly pressing against that weakness? Because that will really challenge your character, and that's interesting. I think, it was Stanley Kubrick. No, it's not Stanley Kubrick. It doesn't matter, but there was a great director that said there are no rules in filmmaking. The only rule is that the cardinal sin is dullness. So you just don't, a film should just not be boring. That's the only rule. So a few examples of how you can pit your character against their main weaknesses and difficulties. If your hero is timid and doesn't take charge, he or she must be forced to become a leader at work, school, whatever, volunteer group. And if they don't, right? They're going to fail and refuse to change over the course of the story, and the consequences will get greater and greater, and the pain will become greater and greater, and then they decide, well, this is too much. I'm going to decide to change now, and they overcome that challenge. And we like to see that because, like I said, that is the experience that humans go through to change and improve, and it's something satisfying, deeply satisfying about that, and watching it. Hence our obsession with movies and stories. So another example, if your hero is incredibly selfish, he or she must be forced to live a life of pure, selfless servitude for 6 months. I don't know of anything like that, but that sounds like it would be a pretty good comedy, right? Like, actually, I would say maybe the movie Yes Man is kind of sort of like that. He's not being forced to live a life of selflessness, but the movie Yes Man, he is, well, I guess he's more risk averse. It's not necessarily selfishness. There's an element of that, but it's a Jim Carrey movie, and he has all these opportunities to do different stuff. Or if he was saying yes, and he would get these opportunities. And at least in the beginning of the movie, it's like opportunities to enjoy and go do stuff with friends and people that are close to him, and refusing to do that is damaging his relationships. But then he goes to this seminar, and where they're like, say yes to every option, every opportunity that comes your way, and it's like it hypnotizes him, and he decided then he can't not say yes to stuff, and now he's being forced. And there's some bad stuff that happens, but he gets a lot of good opportunities too. Another good example is Liar Liar, another Jim Carrey movie, where he's a pathological liar, and he's pretty selfish, and he'll say whatever he needs to get out of a situation, instead of doing the difficult thing, which is to tell the truth. And of course, his son makes a wish that he can not tell any lies for one day, and it just messes him up. I love that movie. But yeah, you can get creative. Like, pit your character against a great weakness that they have. And that Liar Liar one is a great example, because that is definitely his greatest weakness. So forcing him to not lie that's kind of brilliant. So number 4, you need a surprising ending. So this one I'm personally also less clear on, right? I'm breaking down this sentence from this book that I've been reading, The Working Film Director. But in the surprising ending, here are my thoughts anyway. So, ingenuity and creativity sees the hero achieve victory through unusual means, finding help in unexpected places or with unexpected allies, right? And also they achieve victory but suffer some kind of consequences. Maybe they win the war, but they lose the final battle. If things don't quite go as expected, maybe they do get some kind of physical or emotional damage, but they still overall came out on top. I don't think this is so much a rule. I think that it's very helpful to have a surprising ending, perhaps, that you know when you go to see a movie that this main character is eventually going to come out on top. Or pretty much 95% of the time, I don't know how they're going to get there, but I know that this guy or gal is going to come out on top in the end. I think that's the key, is I don't know how they're going to get there or what the end result will be, other than they're going to come out on top. I think that's key, is just to keep it interesting. Keep people guessing. Make them want to know what's going to happen next. Make them want to know more. And it's kind of, I think that's part of the art. I think it's easier said than done. But I think that just goes to that saying I said, which is the cardinal sin is dullness. Keep it interesting. Keep people guessing. They know what the destination is, but they don't know how you're going to get there. The 5th thing is an inevitable ending, which is just what I was saying. It's inevitable, and that people know, more or less, okay, most movies with the traditional structure, the main character is going to be victorious in the end, somehow, some way. But even in a movie where it subverts that, it is at least logical. It seems obvious after the fact that, that movie, that makes sense. I see how it was leading up to that all along, and I'm surprised by how it ended. Maybe it could even be that the hero lost in the end, but at least you can see leading up to that, oh yeah, he had it coming the whole time. I knew this is where it was going. There are some dark movies like that, and sometimes that can be really interesting. So in part of that has to do with good story structure, good story building. You don't want to throw in extraneous elements into the mix that don't explain themselves in some way, right? Like, it's called a deus ex machina, where a plot device, this is the definition, a plot device whereby a seemingly unsolvable problem in a story is suddenly and abruptly resolved by an unexpected and seemingly unlikely occurrence. So it's like your character is facing this serious challenge that's like, how are they going to get out of this one? And then something out of nowhere comes and saves the day that was never explained, that was never introduced, it was never even hinted at. It's very obnoxious. It pulls people out of the story, in my opinion. It pulls me out. It's lazy storytelling. It's very easy to do, which is a problem, because writing a good story is not easy. So by having an inevitable ending, and even not just the end of your entire film, but the end of a scene or the end of an act, being inevitable in that you set up the things that resolve that portion of the story. So at least hint to those things coming in a way that's not so subtle that people don't notice at all, that you set up that was going to happen, but also hopefully not so obvious that they know exactly what's going to happen. Because like I said, you want to keep them guessing, you want to surprise them and keep it interesting. And that is a balancing act, and it's difficult, and I sure as heck don't have the hang of it yet, but that's something that we can all work on. So a surprising ending can also be inevitable in hindsight. Like I was saying, someone does swoop in to help your hero. As long as you set it up beforehand, then people won't be like, wait, what just happened? That was never explained. That's random. And it just lowers the quality of your whole film. Instead, they'll be thinking, oh, okay, I should have seen that coming. That's, because you hinted at it before. Surprising and inevitable. So that's about it. Like you, I'm still always trying to learn and master storytelling. I think someone could spend the vast majority of their life learning and practicing these skills and never truly master them. I don't think you can ever truly master any art form. But, that's part of the journey, and that's part of the fun, I think, is just continuing to try and learn and master these skills. So I hope this information was helpful for you. I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Check out our Facebook group. We got a good community going in there. Filmmakers helping filmmakers out. The Storyteller newsletter I send every week and provide a lot of free resources for the community there, and some additional information as well. So thanks for listening. Hope you tune in next time. Peace out.